Okay, so how do we edge fear out of the equation? For me, I think my greatest fear was getting caught inside a multiple wave massive set. I was absolutely terrified, and I still am of that, to be honest, but I've been working my way to edge fear out of the equation. There's this quote I heard once that says, if fear is before you, it's an obstacle, but if you put it behind you, it surges you forward. So the idea for me is edging fear out little bit by little bit and regularly exposing yourself to slightly uncomfortable situations. So it's not about jumping from 2-foot waves into 10-foot waves straight away. Like, nobody can do that. And I didn't do that either. I started off at little waves in Muizenberg, which were knee high. And I remember being terrified of the waves at Long Beach in front of my house, which were 2-3 foot, but there was a little shore break there that used to really intimidate me. And I worked at that, and I exposed myself to that. And bit by bit, I edged that fear out, I became used to it, and I grew to the next level. Cape Town's got amazing stepping stones. So after doing the high performance wave, my dad took me out to a few deep water waves. So I went from 6 foot maybe to 8 foot. Then next thing I was out in 10 to 12 foot waves. Then I had my first session out at Sunset when I was about 15 years old. And for me, that was a great jump. And then when I was 17 years old, I paddled out to Dungeons for the first time, and it was one of the most life-changing, incredible experiences of my life. I had surfed Sunset, which was already one of my life goals, I think, by the age of 15. And now I was 17 years old, and I had started moving my eyes to Dungeons, which is like the ultimate big wave spot here in South Africa. It's world renowned. There's a lot of big wave surfers from around the world rated as one of the scariest and most difficult waves to ride. And sure enough, a massive winter swell came. I remember borrowing a board that was 9'6" long. I held this thing and it felt like a boat. I had no idea what to do with it. I had a leash that felt like a rope. It was 12 foot long. And yeah, I rocked up in the morning, drove around over Chapman's Peak, and there's a lookout there where you can look across the bay and see Dungeons, and it just looked like a wild mess. You couldn't see anything that was going on. And then I got to the harbor. And what happens to get out to Dungeons, you launch on the boat from the harbor, you go around the mountain, and you get out there and you are surrounded by huge, beautiful mountains. It feels like you've been transported into Jurassic Park. And you have these mountains of water coming in, you've got mountains around you, there's a seal colony right there, the water's cold, it's quite an eerie, uncomfortable feeling. And I remember paddling into the lineup straight away on this huge board. I didn't really know what to do with it. And I caught a few little waves, and I thought this big wave surfing thing was easy. And then the whole horizon went dark. And the horizon started capping. Everyone was paddling to get as far out as possible. And I just remember thinking, I didn't know where the waves were going to be breaking, if it was going to be landing on my head, further out, further in, left or right. And I was suddenly greeted looking up the biggest wave I've ever seen in my life, a 20-foot wall of water. And I remember paddling for my life and my heart rate just escalating through the roof. I was terrified. And I bailed through the base of the wave, and I managed to get through the back. And the wave was pulling my board back. And I was trying to get to my board, and I remember getting pulled further in and looking, and there was an even bigger one behind it. And I got my board, paddled, and I got through the next one. I remember thinking, I had 5 waves in a row that were 20 foot plus. And I remember thinking each time, if this wave pulled me over the falls, I'm going to drown, because I had no breath in my lungs. My adrenaline was overtaking me, and the fear was overtaking me. After the 5th wave, I was shaking with fear, and I thought, big wave surfing is not for me, and I started paddling to the boat. Sure enough, as I was paddling to the boat, another massive set came, caught everyone inside, and because I was paddling sideways, I ended up being in the perfect spot, and this wave lifted me up, and something just told me to spin last minute. I took 2 or 3 strokes, and I dropped in. I remember being at the top of this mountain of a wave, at that time by far the biggest wave of my life, and leaning forward into it, and that speed and momentum I had down the face of the wave was one of the best feelings I've ever had. And I rode the wave to the channel and came out to hooting and cheering, and from that moment, it reset my course to, I wanted to surf big waves after that. Dungeons at that time was the climax of my life, but I didn't just get there straight away. It was years and years of little bit by little bit furthering my comfort zone and taking it to the next level slightly and regularly stepping out into the unknown. So yeah, and after that dungeon session, it laid the platform to launch me into waves like Jaws in Hawaii, Mavericks, Nazare, Chopu, yeah, and now my career of chasing big waves. So yeah, and we all start somewhere. I mean, starting at 1 foot waves is absolutely perfect, and you progress from 1 foot to 2 foot, then 2 foot maybe to 4 foot, then maybe have a breakthrough session, get to 6 foot. Then you hit the outer reefs and start surfing some 10-foot waves, and little bit by little bit you edge fear out of the equation. Everyone has their fears and everyone has their comfort zone, and I really believe we've all been given a gift and a responsibility to push ourselves to the limit of what our own capacity is. So let's try break our comfort zone and take it to the next level.